Well, welcome to another edition of the Influence Global podcast. And I'm delighted to have with me today Emilio Arciniega, who has joined with one of the fastest growing talent agencies in the UK. It's lovely to see you, Emilio.
Yes, and you, Gordon. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I managed to get the pronunciation almost
You
right. I
did,
think
yeah,
it's,
you
uh,
did.
it's not an easy pronunciation.
You did. You did. We had a laugh before the call because I told you not to worry because I was 18 before I could pronounce my last name correctly, and my dad, who's Peruvian, kind of slapped me on the wrist and said, "You've not been pronouncing that right for the first 18 years of your life." So that's good. You did a good job pronouncing that.
So we're going to talk today about what it takes to launch
Yeah,
a talent agency, and I know that one of the things that you're very keen to portray is not wanting to be one of the big talent agencies. You want to try and find your own niche. You want to do
yeah,
something that's really different, that holds true to your values. And I think
yeah,
it's really important in a sort of a crowded talent agency space.
yeah.
How does somebody stand out? And I think having a clear value proposition, having real
Mm,
values that you subscribe to, and your talent is so
yeah.
important. So tell me about your journey, because you set up, didn't you, in COVID?
We did, yes. My wife and I, Amy, started the idea of an agency during COVID, but the idea wasn't to start a talent agency. Like most people during COVID, our jobs were both kind of up in the air. Amy was put on furlough from a recruitment job that she was doing, and I was managing a YouTuber in the US for Boyce Avenue. They're one of the biggest YouTubers in the world, but they're musicians. And a large part of my job was tour management. So obviously, when COVID hit, there was no touring, and it was actually we just finished a tour in Asia, and everybody had started putting the masks on their face on planes. It was in like the February before the March. We were thinking to ourselves like, this seems quite over the top here. Like it hadn't come to the UK yet. There was no talk of it in the UK, so didn't think it was going to affect anything. And then, lo and behold, a few weeks later, the announcement came out that we had to go into lockdown. So half of my job had kind of fallen off a cliff, and I didn't know if that was going to come back tomorrow, next week, next month. But Amy and I decided we can either sit around and kind of create hobbies for ourselves, or film TikToks or whatever everybody was doing, or we could do something that might become a bit of a side hustle for us. So one of the things that I did, and one of my jobs working for this other YouTuber, was to facilitate brand partnerships for them. So
Hmm.
trying to get brands to promote their product, their service on their YouTube channel. Um, which, let me tell you, with musicians is easier said than done, because there's a way bigger realm of licensing law that comes into that.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I wish I could just do it with content creators, because it'd be far easier. There's no licensing to pass there. So I said to Amy, why don't we start using some of our contacts that we'd already made in terms of, or my contacts I'd already made in terms of brand partners, and pitch some of the creators that I'd built up a network of knowing throughout the last, 5, 6 years of managing this band. So we just started doing that, and it was very naive. We were pitching hundreds of emails a day to brands that were never going to work for us because we didn't understand the ecosystem. Like, honestly, Gordon, when I tell you, we sat there and we were emailing Coca-Colas of the world, the Nikes of the world.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
they were never gonna reply to us.
No.
And we did that for few months, and then one day a Swedish brand called Estrid, which have really doubled down over the last few years on their influencer marketing, came back to us and said, "Oh yeah, we've actually got some budget that we could throw your way." And I can't remember if that was the first deal that we actually signed or not, but the first deal we signed was £200, and we made a £40 commission on it, and it had a light bulb moment for Amy and I that this could actually be a business. So for the next 12 months, I'd say, while we were still working our other jobs, we started to build a bit of a brand agency. So we were running campaigns for brands on retainers, on one-off deals, and we would go out to content creators and try and put these deals together. After about 12 months of doing that, we started to realize that, one, there was a gap in the market for talent management, or what I call proactive and good talent management, and two, that we actually had everything that we needed to be able to plug that gap, because my background from the age of 18 was talent management. I was managing YouTubers from the moment I got out of school. And it made sense for Amy and I that if there was this gap that needed to be filled, why don't we do it? And it's quite an interesting story, because we decided, and I remember it so distinctly, there was a day in February of 2021, and I'd said to Amy, and we were still in kind of like COVID time this year later on, and I think we might have even still been in lockdown. But I said to Amy, we're definitely still staying at Amy's parents. But I'd said to Amy, by the end of the year, we need to be managing talent, because we weren't managing talent at that point. We were just placing talent with brands. I said, we need to be managing talent by the end of the year because there's a gap here for us. And that day, a manager from another agency, another talent agency, just randomly called me and said, hey, are you hiring for talent managers? And they didn't know that we were having this conversation. We hadn't put a job posting out saying we're going to become a talent agency. And it was just this like kickstart of an idea that was like, this is meant to be, this is fate. Like sometimes you put everything in place that you can kind of get lucky. So we started to onboard talent there and then, really. And in that first year, we probably signed 10 creators, if that. We kept it really, really small. And then the year after, so 2022 into 2023, we grew, and now we're at a roster of about 50 creators. But the whole, kind of taking it back, the whole idea of why we wanted to try and plug a gap is because I think there are incredible talent agencies out there. The YMUs of the world, the Insanities, the Intertalents, they're incredible agencies. And there's a lot of really good small agencies as well. Just unfortunately, the barrier to entry to be a talent manager is zero. Anybody can do it.
Absolutely.
I did it. Like yeah. I just jumped into the industry. Like I didn't have any kind of, didn't have any qualifications, didn't need to go for any regulations, nothing like that. And because of that, there is some mismanagement in the industry. And that's what Amy and I were kind of seeing when we were working with managers on these brand campaigns before we were in agencies. We would see the good and the bad of talent management. And we just thought, if we had, at the time we didn't have a child, but if we had a child and she was an 18-year-old girl and she was in the industry, we'd want her to be protected. We'd want Absolutely. Her to understand the industry, understand her intellectual property rights, understand her value. And now we do have an 18-month-old daughter, and everything we think about is, right, for Sophia, what can we do to make the industry a place that if she ever gets into it, she's protected? So that doesn't have to be these grandiose plans of changing the industry. It's quite simple things, which is educate talent, be transparent with them, and be proactive. Because I think the one thing that frustrated us the most when we would hear stories of talent that didn't like their management, say, is that most of these, call it mismanagement situations, came from management just not being proactive for their talent. They were just kind of sat there on their inbox, taking 20% of a deal that was always going to happen anyway. Right. They weren't getting out there and working on their strategy or working on their career. And Amy and I were just like, why? And very cheesy.
And it's a really good point that you make, actually, because I have a strong view about this, and so much so the BCMA set up a set of industry best practice guidelines for talent agencies earlier this year, because I feel very similar to you that there is the good, the bad, and the absolute ugly out there. And I think it's very easy for talent to be somewhat naive about thinking, great, somebody wants to sign me, somebody's going to go and get me work, without necessarily doing all of the right due diligence. And particularly, when you're talking about young people that might be just coming out of college or school or stuff like that. What does it mean? What does intellectual property rights mean? What is it, a contract? For some talent, does a contract scare them or frighten them rather than they feel that they're protected? I know in the fashion industry, there were dreadful stories of huge fees being taken, up to 50% of talent management taking that because they felt that they were a new talent and they'd have to put more work in. but people are coming to that talent primarily because of the content that they're creating and the level of engagement that they've got in their communities, which is to be admired. That said, of course, you know, there's also bad on the creative side, aren't there?
Yeah,
That
100%.
they, you know, that they've got to understand that, you know, if they're being paid for a gig and it means posting at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, there's no ifs or buts about that, because it may be linked to a major product launch or something where everybody's coming together, and you know, or I can't be bothered, or I was tired, or I was late, is pretty inexcusable, and they need to understand the ramifications of not doing stuff, as well as
Yeah.
being proactive and supportive, like you've just mentioned.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where the education piece comes in with talent. And I think that, listen, I think this is one of the best industries in the world right now. And I obviously am going to say that because I'm in it and I want it to thrive and I want it to do well.
Yeah.
But I've seen the industry change people's lives. I've seen people that before they became content creators would not be able to afford the life that they have now. And one of the greatest examples of that is we work with a couple of creators called Caitlin and Leah, and they're a same-sex couple, beautiful family. And prior to them starting social media, they had very, what I'd call, normal jobs. And the idea of them being able to fund an IVF journey was quite a difficult thing to fathom. Now they've done that. They've got their own house. They've got a beautiful baby called Oakley. They've got a second baby on the way, and
Wow.
that has come from this industry. Like, I don't want to get too over the top about this, but this industry created life there. And so I'm so bullish about how amazing this industry can be, but it's only going to continue being amazing if, like you said, we almost need to weed out the bad practices and train the people in it and create the regulations and the guidelines, like you just said, so that we can make sure that, one, the industry is legitimate, but two, it has sustainability. Because if you don't, I guess, legitimize the industry, it will just fall apart.
Yeah.
But I think that's where,
and also it should be. I mean, I work with Nottingham, the Nottingham Trent University Business School, and we run campaigns.
We've actually got about 3 people that work for us that all came from Nottingham Trent.
It's
like,
an amazing.
It seems like that's a good influencer hub of a university.
It really is. Well, we've done 3 projects now with 500 students each year and 20 brands partnering with them. And as a sort of part-time university lecturer, I love going to see them and talk to them about their industry. And every time I do it, there's always people that come up to me afterwards. So this is great. This is so inspiring. This project has really made me want to work in the influencer marketing industry. And in fact, the last one we did, which was all about cause-related marketing, I went to have a look at the pitches and to see how these students are presenting themselves. And I'm not joking, some of them wouldn't be out of place in a top influencer agency. The way they addressed the target audience, the type of collaboration, the objectives, the evaluation. Yeah, it was a great pleasure to see, I must admit. And you know, when you start to see stats that say one in 3 or 1 in 4 kids want to become an influencer, so which is great and inspiring, as long as it's not you know, we're not sending the wrong message, which is all about a luxury lifestyle with lots of free stuff. You know, I think people tend to forget that it can be hard creating really great content. And you'll know, as somebody that manages YouTubers or has done, the good ones, they're all over the numbers, aren't they? They know their stuff.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And I think that, not to go off on a tangent, but YouTube, any YouTuber that has been successful, I think the number one reason is consistency on the platform. But secondly, as you say, is knowing your numbers and knowing your analytics and digging into those analytics. I think that a lot of people probably who aren't in the industry, and I understand why, but they probably see it as, oh, you just post a bunch of videos and you see what works and what doesn't, and maybe one goes viral and then you get rich and etc. etc. It isn't that. And yes, you can go viral, but if you're going to have a sustainable career and be one of these content creators that's had a 10, 15 going on 20-year career, then you need to be all over the numbers, all over your consistency. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and be like, this is the hardest job in the world. Like, there is way harder jobs. There's way bigger things in the world going on right now. But if you want to be a good and sustainable creator, you have to be all over your numbers, like you just said.
Yeah. And so with the talent that you're representing,
Yeah.
how do you make sure that they've got how can you be proactive with so many people? I'm guessing you've got a team of people that you
Yeah.
do you assign them how does that work in terms of account management and talent
Yeah.
managers?
It's a good question. So one of the other things that Amy and I saw when we were starting to launch an agency, or even just before that, was the number one reason that any talent didn't feel looked after by management is if their roster was too big. And what you would get usually is you'd get a lot of management agencies that would try and increase maybe their profit margins or just the way in which they work by having, 10, 15, 20 creators all managed by one talent manager, which from where I came from, where I was just managing one big YouTuber, was like worlds apart of how I would see management. I saw management very hands-on. You were there for everything business related, but you were their best friend. You would look after them if they needed like just advice from their personal lives, whatever it may be. And I'm not saying that we do that day in, day out at Outreach, but what Amy and I said from the get-go, and it's never changed and it never will, is that every talent on our roster will be on a small individual roster, meaning that every talent manager only manages 3 to 6 creators, and that number varies depending on the size of the creator and what kind of resources are needed to manage that particular creator. But we keep our rosters small so that they can have that almost feel of though as though they're managed by just that person. That person only looks after them, even though there's a team behind them, who like talent assistants, directors above them helping, etc., etc. It feels very much like that one person is only managing you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important, even from a practicality point of view, of if we're sat there going to our talent managers, we want you to be proactive. We want you to be strategic about the way that you work with your creators. We want you to think long term. That is there's a bandwidth there, but if you manage too many people, you're never going to do it. So we've always made sure that we've done that. I mean, we've got a team of almost 20 people across a roster of 50. And yes, some of that is support staff, but that kind of shows you that nobody on our team has a huge roster. And I just don't think it's sustainable long term for any agency, whether you're big or small. So it sounds cheesy, but the reason why we called ourselves Outreach to begin with was because Amy and I would sit at a desk just outreaching to brand after brand after brand for opportunities for our creators. And we don't want to lose that. And obviously we've got more refined in the way we pitch and the way that we kind of facilitate these opportunities for people. But that ethos of we're just going to be one of the most proactive agencies in the market, it has to stay with us however big we grow. And I know we've talked before the call about us not wanting to be one of these huge agencies, but we do want to be a big agency, but we want to grow in a sustainable way where we don't lose that. We've just brought in a new managing director called Amy Bryant Jeffries, and she's come over. She used to be at Gleam.
I know who she is.
Obviously,
yes.
Yeah, she's a brilliant individual. She then went to Meta, and she said herself she's never seen a team that is more proactive than us. And I'm not saying that we get it right all the time, but we're just hustlers, and I don't want to lose that ever. But I can only expect my team to do that if you keep the roster small enough for them to actually do it. If you say go and manage 20 people and then be super proactive, there's just not enough hours in the day.
So why did I mean, it's a really important point you've raised there. Why do you're pitching to a creator about why they should join you? What makes them want to do that? What do they feel that is the glue that brings them over?
I mean, the first it's funny you asked that, because the first thing that I usually say to a creator when I speak to them is I ask them what they're looking for in management, because I know that the way we manage might be different to what they're actually looking for. I think that a lot of creators probably say, I want management, either to help me in my day to day, to give me the reputation of the fact that I've got a manager, whatever it may be. There's 1,000 reasons why you might want a manager, but then you have to dig into actually what you're wanting from them. Are you wanting them to help plan your days, help plan your content? Are you trying to work with a manager, get you onto TV, to spread out from social media? Do you want just more brand deals? What is it that you're looking for in management? Because it'd be quite easy for me to sit there and just say, we can do this and we can do this and we can, we can pitch you to brands and we can work on your social media strategy and we can put you on a small roster, but that might not be what they want. They might not be looking for that, and we're just wasting everybody's time. So usually I sit down with somebody and I say, what are you looking for from management, and figure out what that is. The second thing I usually say is, you don't need management, which is a really weird thing to say from somebody like me running a management agency. But I've seen plenty of creators be extremely successful without management. And the only time I think that you need management is if you want to purely focus on your content.
Yeah.
If you want to purely focus on your content and take away that business element of your day to day, then finding the right management partner is like a very, very good way for you to achieve that. But you don't need management. And I think the thing that I usually try to answer your question in a long-winded way, the thing that I think that makes us stand out to, I think, other people on our level, because I think I'm not sat here going, we're going to stand out to a YMU or an Insanity yet, because we're not there yet. But I think the thing that makes us stand out at our level is two things. We have invested in our team to allow us to have the resources of a bigger agency from a people power standpoint. We have such a big team for how many people we manage, which means that you will get such one-on-one proactivity from us.
And do all the team work remotely, or have you?
No. We're all based in London. We're actually looking for a new office at the moment, which is a fun job. It's like trying to find a house for 20 people that they all like. God. So it's quite but no, we're all based in London. I think that's we did start remote, obviously, during COVID, and I think that it's great, and we still have a level of hybrid working, but I think that it's quite difficult to one, create company culture, and two, train junior members of the team being completely remote. I think there's so much that you learn just being in the office.
Absolutely.
Without you knowing it. Like,
I know.
You'll have a director or a senior member of the team on a phone call dealing with something, and you'll inevitably learn from it. So we're very keen to make sure that people not just come to the office, but want to come to the office. Hence, we're trying to move office. We're wanting to make it a place where people want to go, want to learn when they're in there. So no, yeah, we're currently in a hybrid situation, but for a long time we were remote.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, just to sort of summarize, maybe, what would you say is a perfect creator and talent agent relationship? What are the, how, if we could summarize that, what do you think is the blueprint for what that looks like?
Yeah, I think my job as a manager, if I put my manager hat on and go back to when I was managing people day in, day out, my job is to make sure that I achieve all of your goals, but prioritize those goals. Because a lot of creators, like most people in life, have a million things they want to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think that it's our job to put in the strategy to reach all of those goals in the timeline that makes sense. Because I think that if I have a creator come to me and they go, I've got 1 million followers and I want to go on TV and I want to launch a brand, I want to do a book deal. It's like, cool, we need to do X, Y, and Z in this order to get there. And it's my job to make sure that you get from A to B in the quickest, but the most sustainable way possible. Because I could get you a book deal tomorrow, but it might be a bad book deal, or I could get you on a TV show, but it might not be the right thing for your career. And I think that the best relationship between managers and creators is a twofold relationship, which is neither of you work for one another. You're a team. And if you both work as a team, you'll succeed. And I think that too often it isn't felt like that. And I feel like that, again, comes from if somebody has too big a roster and they can't give that two-way relationship. The best relationships that I've seen from creators is you have a creator that frankly loves social media, loves content creation. They don't just want to do it to make the money. They don't want to just do it because they've seen their friends do it or they've seen people they admire do it. They truly love making content, and they've got a ton of ideas behind that, and they're willing to put in the time, put in the consistency, and put in the effort to achieve the goals they want to achieve. And then you have a manager that is strategic enough and hardworking enough that's going to put in that strategy for them so that they can achieve those goals. Because I think where usually management relationships fall down is either the manager is not being proactive enough for their talent and not listening to what the goals they want to achieve and not putting in that strategy, or the talent isn't putting in their side of the bargain and they're not being consistent enough with their content, or they're not, delivering content on time, whatever it may be. And so I don't think it's one side or the other is more important. You both have to be in it, and that's why being a team is so important, because if one of you isn't invested, it's just never going to work.
Absolutely. Well, Emilio, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today and hearing about your success and rapid growth.
No problem.
I mean, to have 20 staff and 50 creators that you're already managing is some mean achievement. And you're probably still half my age as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going grey quickly, but I don't know if that's the company or my 18-month-old daughter. But yeah.
Very good. So how can people find out more about you?
I mean, outreach. If you want to follow us on Instagram, Outreach Agency. Our website is outreachagency.co.uk. If you want to follow me or get in touch, then just add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk to anybody about the industry. I am an absolute geek when it comes to talking about the industry and wanting to just make it a better place in terms of adding, more transparency. And I think you can only do that by having conversations with people. So if anybody wants to have a chat about the industry or getting into the industry, then digitally my door's always open.
That's great. Emilio, thank you so much for joining us on the Influence Global.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Gordon.